Hi, Mike's Carburetor Parts. In this video I'm going to talk about flooding on a Motorcraft 2-barrel 2150 carburetor like I have here. But first let's ask, so why is my carburetor flooding? Let's talk about what is flooding. Carburetor flooding is a condition that occurs when too much fuel is delivered into the carburetor, causing an overflow. Overflow gas could be coming out of here, just this vent here possibly. So this can happen for several reasons. Let's start with what can cause improper fuel pressure. If the fuel pump is too high, it can overpower the float mechanism, causing more fuel to enter the carburetor than it can handle. For this carburetor, test the fuel pressure for 4.5 to 5 pounds. Don't trust the new fuel pump. And if you need to, add a regulator between the pump and the carburetor. You could have a dirty or malfunctioning needle valve. The needle valve controls the flow of fuel into the bowl of the carburetor. If it's dirty or not seating properly, it can allow too much fuel to enter. Check the bite and tip of the needle to see if it is swelled up or is scratched. Remember not to put pressure on the needle when adjusting the float. Okay, so from here we'll need to take the top off the carburetor. So, as I said, take the float out here. So check the bite and tip on the needle. And incidentally, when you're adjusting the float, don't put any pressure on the needle. It can damage this bite and tip. Also look for swelling. If it's sat for a long time, the ethanol may have gotten to it over time. Okay, so there is that. Now to test this needle to make sure it's not leaking, hold it down in there and blow into the fuel inlet here. And I don't care what you use your mouth or whatever, but it only should be 4.5 to 5 pounds. Yeah, if you blow hard enough, of course it's going to leak by, but blow in there to make sure it's not leaking. You should not be able to blow it through. That's one thing to check. Okay. Okay. Another thing that can cause the flooding, excessive priming. So pumping the gas pedal too many times can flood the carburetor. So when it's cold, press down the accelerator once, then crank the engine. If you suspect you pumped the gas too much, then hold the pedal all the way to the floor and crank the engine. So you need to check for a bad float. Now this is a nitrofill float, and they're basically solid, but they can absorb fuel over time. The only way to test them is by weighing them. We have weights for these on our website, and this is a gram scale right here. And as you can see, this was, let's see, what does it say here? This one is like almost 15 grams, about 13 grams for this one. That's the only way you can test a nitrofill. A brass float, which is what we replaced these with, by the way, you heat up a pan of water just prior to boiling, immerse the float in it, and look for any bubbles. Any bubbles indicates a rupture in the float, and then of course replace the float. The other thing you need to do is check the float. If it's make sure it's not too far to the side, over here where it's rubbing the side of the carburetor. Some of these have check valves that come through here in this hole right here, and if not trimmed off the end of the check valve, that could interfere with the float. Move the float up and down by hand just to make sure there's no obstruction. Perhaps the float pin itself, this is the float pin, could be worn to where it needs to be replaced. So that's some of the things you check on the float. And then check the float level, although they're using this is so far off it's not going to make the carburetor flood, but anytime you have the top off, go ahead and check the float level. You got to hold it down onto the seat, and then you measure it from the top of the float to the top of the float bowl. Now the measurements are different depending on the vehicle, so check your spec sheet to see what yours should be. Check for a leaky venturi. So run the car, get it warmed up, turn it off, take the air cleaner off, and look down here and see if gas is dribbling out the venturi here. It might be dripping out through these little brass tubes right here. That means your main discharge is leaking. So it could be the check ball. Needs to be seated, and the way you do that is you tap on the check ball with a drift punch. Oh, washer, there's a washer on here, it came off. Everything's falling out. So here's the check ball. You put the check ball in there and tap on it gently to form a good trough down there. And then this is the check weight that goes on top of it. Make sure it's there. The other thing to check, make sure the bowl vent isn't plugged off. Here's a bowl vent. Right now it's plugged off. You don't want that. These are vents. Make sure that somebody hasn't plugged them off for some crazy reason. You never know. Your gas cap might be a non-vented gas cap when it should be a vented. So that would cause gas to siphon out of the float bowl and into the intake manifold, flooding your engine. Okay, so that covers the primary reasons for a carburetor to flood. And I hope this helps you troubleshoot your 2150 carburetor. Please visit us at mikescarb.com, and there will be a link in the description to our website, and also for this product right here that we do sell, this gram scale. Okay, and there you go. Thank you for watching.